Hello everyone, so our group will explain about true experimental research design, and our group is consisting of Marcel, Kinanti, Fregard, and me, Phoebe. So we're going to start off with what is true experimental research. It is one of the methods in experimental research designs that aims to determine the causal effect between an independent variable and a dependent variable under controlled conditions. It's under controlled conditions because the researcher who conduct the experiment must be able to control all the variables that will later affect the outcome. So one of the keywords in true experimental research is manipulation, which is given to the dependent variable by the independent variable to see the causal relationship, or the changes, the effect, meaning that if the independent variable is changed, its value will also change the dependent variable value. A simple example of this would be maybe a researcher wants to see how a Panamex affects a patient with migraine. So the patient with migraine is the dependent variable, while the Panamex is the independent variable, or the treatment.
So, on the next slide, I would like to discuss what is perhaps the purpose of a true experiment. True experiment itself is argued to maximize internal validity, which means the outcome or results of the experiment are evident and adequate in expounding the cause and effect relationship of a certain phenomenon or variables being studied upon. So, what are the criterions of a true experiment? The first factor will be the control and experimental group. As it is shown in the slide, the control group is basically some individuals within the research participants that act as the baseline to compare on the experimental results. They own similar characteristics to other respondents who actually participate in the experiment, or the researcher would call as the experimental group, refers to a set of individuals who are a part of the research participants and will undergo experiments. So later on, after the researcher obtains some results from the experiment, they would compare to the control group to know how the experiment has affected the individuals within the experimental group, how the effect will not be present if the cause is absent. So the second factor will be the researcher manipulated variable, or in short, the circumstance of manipulation. It basically refers to the idea that the researcher would assemble a favorable situation where a cause is present, or may be referred as the independent or predictor variable on which the researcher possesses the privilege to control. This independent variable allows a causal relation to appear. It is more plausible as it shows that it precedes the effect, which abolish any ambiguous temporal precedence. The dependent variable, on the other hand, serves as the outcome or effect of the research after being correlated to the independent variables. So the last factor will be the random assignment. It refers to the provision of equal opportunities, where basically the experimental samples or subjects need to be chosen randomly from any within the research participants to ensure that any differences amongst them are pure chances.
Now let's talk about the types of true experiments. The randomized subject, control group, pre-test, post-test design, the Solomon free group design, and the Solomon 4 group design. Now, the randomized subject, control group, pre-test, post-test design. This design in this experimental study uses a comparison group. In this design, it can be understood that the researcher conducted a test or measurement before the treatment, pre-test, and after the treatment, post-test. This design has a weakness though, in that researchers can't investigate the effects of treatment interaction because they do not have a group without a pre-test. Analysis of the data in this design can be tested with a multi-line test of covariance patterns, where the pre-test is used as a variable, including if the design is expanded. Now we talk about the Solomon free group design. This research design, the researchers used three groups, where the two groups were the comparison groups. One of the comparison group was measured before the experiment was conducted, pre-test. The three groups were randomized by the principle of random assignment. Researchers conducted measurements before and after the treatment or intervention was given to the treatment group or experimental group. In this design, one of the comparison groups did not do the pretest but was exposed to treatment X. Even though it received the experimental treatment, it still functioned as a comparison group. This design actually overcame the weakness inherent in the previous one, namely being able to document the effects of pre-test interaction with the researcher treatment, although not directly. Data analysis with this design can be tested by using a multi-way variance test. For covariance patterns, where the pretest is used as a variable, including if the design is expanded, combined with the t-test to see the interaction effect of the pretest treatment. If it does not meet the parametric requirement, it is tested using a combination of Wilcoxon-Mark rank test and the Mann-Whitney U-test. And now we move on to the third and last one, the Solomon 4-group design. Now, this design has several comparisons to determine the effect of treatment X. This design has more comparison group and is an extension of the previous design by including one more comparison group, where 4 groups makes greater strength because it combines the advantages of several other designs. The 3 groups were randomized by the principle of random assignment. The researcher who conducted measurements before and after the treatment or intervention was given the treatment group or experimental group. This overcame the weaknesses of the previous 2 designs. The more time and effort required for 2 trials simultaneously and the problem of increasing the number of the same subject that would be required for the 4 groups. Data analysis can be tested by using a multi-way variance test for covariance patterns, where the pretest is used as a covariable.
So after the experiment is conducted, the next step is data analysis. In true experimental design, the hypothesis is confirmed or approved or disapproved using statistical analysis, namely the descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. In descriptive statistics, the raw data is presented, described, and communicated concisely and neatly and able to provide core information from the existing dataset in the form of tables, graphs, or graphics. So it could be in the form of histogram, pie chart, OGIF, polygon, or even numeric data graphs like central tendency, fractile, skewness, etc. Meanwhile, inferential statistics is an overview of all methods that are used to analyze data and is applied to forecast and form conclusions by analyzing samples gathered from the population data. So it seeks to assess a population in general using the sample results. So because they are based on partial information obtained from a part of the population data, the generalizations are somehow can be uncertain. So as a result, all that is obtained is predictions. Therefore, a comprehensive understanding of probability theory is very required when you're using inferential statistical methods.
Let's move on to the advantages and disadvantages of true experiment. The advantages are, it is highly accurate and credible as the data can be statistically analyzed. It owns high reliability and easily replicated as it is based on numerical data. And it is also can be compared or available for comparisons. And also it is easily understood and comprehensible. While the disadvantages are, it is expensive or costly as it accommodates a large number of samples and research participants. It is time consuming in managing the entire process from A to Z, and it is too idealistic.
An example. Before hiring a job seeker, firms use exams to weed out less qualified candidates from a pool of qualified applicants. Organizations can determine an employee's skill set at the point of hire in this manner. Organizations also conduct employee training during the term of employment in order to boost employee productivity and in general to the development of the organization. At the end of each session, additional evaluations is performed to assess the impact of the training on employees' ability and to identify areas of development. This is used to see where the employee can improve themselves, like they're hard dealing with people, then they can focus on that. In this case, the employees is the topic and the therapy is the training. This is the example of a pre-test post-test control group experimental research study.